One of my favorite things about being in New York is having access to Deluxe. Deluxe is a very special institution to me. I've been a customer for a very, very long time. Today, unprecedented access to understanding how Deluxe approaches their butchery. Knowing that Deluxe is drawing on a tradition of specifically Cantonese, if not Chinese butchery, but also changing it up a little bit so that it fits their business needs and their customer needs. We're at Deluxe Food Market, my favorite grocery store in Chinatown. We're going to meet Danny real quick because he's one of the cousins, the proprietors of Deluxe Food Market. They have a very interesting style of butchery that I wanted to show you guys today. The interesting thing is there is something special about Chinese American style butchery, and there's something special also about Chinese style butchery that allows us to do things with our pork especially that you wouldn't be able to get with regular American style butchery. Danny, you're the proprietor. What's on your business card?
What is on my business card? From everything.
You're the Laoban.
From the janitor all the way up until you're making big time decisions.
Yeah, he's a Laoban of Deluxe Food Market. This is really interesting setup. So the family is split up into different cousins, and each cousin roughly runs one of these stores,
One of the
right?
stores, yeah. We have 7 throughout New York City and the 3 Chinatowns.
Yeah,
So
is this the oldest one?
No, this is not the oldest one.
What's
The oldest one is the one on Bayard Street. That's our, like, what we would call in Chinese called Yat Fun Dim, because that's our first store that we opened up. And that started in 1984.
Damn.
Yeah.
Before my time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ribs first.
Okay, so right here are our spare ribs and what we call baby back ribs.
Okay.
And
What's the difference?
Basically, the spare rib is a whole piece. So this right here is the whole spare rib. And what we would call the baby back rib is we would just bandsaw from here and make it completely straight.
Right.
So that it comes out looking like this. It's the same piece, except that we bandsaw it and now it's like a nice and square block.
So one of the greatest delights of Chinese style ribs is sometimes you get to bite through cartilage and it's nice texture. The reason why it's not hard bone is because it's on the side of the rib.
Exactly. This side is the soft bone, and it's a really nice like cartilage crunch, which you know like.
But it's marbled and all this stuff, and it's like tendony. So this part of the bone itself, do you also cut that up for rib use?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thin strips. So what you will notice is that the Chinese cuts, the way that we cut meat, is that we don't have big slabs of meat that we would cook, because we eat communally. So we always have everything cut down to smaller pieces, and it's shared within the whole family. So that's just how like the Chinese way of cooking and eating is, you know.
I really want to talk about song pa.
Sure.
So it's labeled here as lean pork. It's one of the most prized cuts in my personal culinary canon for pork because it's snappy. It's not quite rubbery. It's got really nice chew. A little bit like, it's got crunch.
Here, I'll show you the camera. It's like, this is literally like the loin right here. And then this would be the spare ribs right here. The song pa would probably, I don't know if it's from the front or the back, but it's like from one of the ends. I believe it's from the back.
It's like right where the shoulder meets.
Yeah. And this like little slap, it's like basically a cap for like the loin.
This is oftentimes included in American or Western style butchery as part of the copa, which is, you'll recognize by its very deep color and very even marbling and very, very soft texture.
And for the Sopranos, the Sopranos fans out there, is the gabagool.
It's what gabagool is made of.
The gabagool.
That's my favorite part of the show, is watching Tony Soprano just heavily breathing on his kitchen and scarfing down cured meats.
Thank you.
Keep everything clean.
Danny's going to get back to work because he's got actual work to do. We're going to go take a look at the second part of the grocery store that's basically a restaurant where they cook with all of these beautiful, delicious cuts. They turn them into all sorts of things for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Let's go.
Thank you.
All right.
想問下三餸飯幾多錢啊？7個2毫半，$7.25. $7.25 for 3 dishes and rice. If I were to describe what Chinese fast food was, it would be this. Basically, you get a styrofoam box, you get a little bit of rice. You can change to fried rice or noodles if you want, and then you scoop in your stir-fried dishes. Could be fish, could be ribs, could be salt and pepper pork chop, could be vegetables, Buddha's delight, could be anything. But they've been doing this here for ages, and this is one of the best lunch deals, but also they're seriously cooking. All this stuff comes fresh. When we get back to the test kitchen, Dave will show you how to break down that pig into the different cuts that will become the dishes that we're ordering right now. 排骨唔該。嗰個夠，咕嚕肉啊，係咪？唔該，唔好意思。Falling out at Deluxe. Welcome back to the Food 52 Test Kitchen. We're here today with Dave, who runs the Flushing branch of Deluxe. He is also a master butcher, and he's going to be showing us how to break down 3 primal cuts of pork: the shoulder, the loin, and the ribs or the belly. Dave, can you tell us about what we have in front of us here?
All right, so today, this is the Boston butt. A little history of why it's called the Boston butt. A lot of people, they say that the Boston butt is the biggest piece on the shoulder, so it's like the butt of the gun or the butt of the butt of the pig. So that's one explanation. Another is that in history, this cut was considered a cheap cut, so they would package it and ship it in large containers or barrels, and those are called butts. So if you look it up on the internet, you can find these 2 explanations.
Awesome. So, I mean, if you show, I'm the pig in question, where's the Boston butt?
Right here.
Exactly. So despite the fact that it is, with me and my hands up, despite it being called a butt, it's actually the forward leg.
Yes.
And is it also the meatier and more flavorful joint?
Yes, it is.
So what are we going to get out of this butt cut?
All right, so you're gonna get 3 pieces. All right, there's a natural seam over here that separates the muscle. You're gonna get this one right here. In our market, we call it the pork neck meat. In American supermarkets, it'll be called the copa.
Yeah.
All right, and this part is the CT, or the collar trim. And then this one is, they would just call it the butt.
Cool.
And we just call it the 豬頸肉,
豬頸肉,
叉燒肉, 角肉.
This entire piece in Cantonese we would refer to as mui tao or mui yok. And mui means plum. Plum because of its deep purplish color as opposed to the light white, light pink. And secondly, for its tenderness and the marbling.
So how I usually would start off is, we'll just take off some of this fat. And then there's a natural seam right here that separates these 2 muscles.
Great.
And then now you have this beautiful pork neck part and the CT. And this is the butt. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the world famous tasio or the 豬頸肉. This is where a lot of, when you go to Hong Kong and you order tasio, is this right here. It's got a good mixture of fat and tenderness and the leanness of it. So you literally just slice this down right here and you can see.
Wow, look at that. No joke. Okay, there's a legend to this. You guys ready for this? It's called dayato, which is the first cut. It means 2 things. First is that it's literally the first cut off of the shoulder. First thing the butcher does. The second is that dayato also implies, it's kind of like a Chinese superhero myth type of situation where it's like the first cut under God, because this is the most tender, and I mean it's perfect marbling for making roast meat like char siu. When you're making roast meat like char siu, when you're eating roast meat like char siu and you take that bite, you want that fattiness because the fat carries that pork flavor, right? But the meat itself, the lean meat, is going to absorb that marinade, and you want a little bit of textural contrast. This is the most prized char siu cut. And the only place that I know that you can get it in New York Chinatown is at Deluxe, because they're the only people that are going to take this out. You're never going to get this at a regular American supermarket.
If you wanted to get it at a regular
Oh, well, if you wanted to get to a butcher, we would ask, the Italian term for this is most likely
The copa.
copa or capicola,
Yeah,
what becomes, in Danny's words, gabagool.
The gabagool.
All right,
And
so
then
this is the CT butt, the
this-
collar trim.
yep.
What do people normally make out of the CT butt?
So this is, again, people would use it for tasio again, but this, as you can see, this cut is a lot leaner,
That copa, right?
the copa. This is also called the serratus muscle. And if for human terms, it's right here, over here, and it's also called the boxer's muscle. So a lot of boxers, you see that little
It's like
sexy,
the extra lat kind of
yep,
situation.
the little sexy linings over here. This is it.
Cool. And the reason why it's dark meat like this is because it does get used, but not that much, right? Can you give me a general overview for your process for char siu?
So what we would do is that we would slice this in half.
Right along the seams, right?
Yep. And then up until this part. And then now we marinate this whole piece of meat. Same way with this, we'll cut this in half or up until a certain point. And this piece of meat will be dangling in the oven for approximately 30 to 40 minutes at around 450 in the oven.
Yeah. Okay, so back to this.
Back to this one.
The blade/butt.
Yep. So first, we're gonna remove this membrane up top.
If you don't, when you sear it, it'll curl up in a funny
Yes.
way, and which means you won't get consistent caramelization.
So then I'm gonna take this whole fat off.
This piece, are you grinding this up also?
Yep. Everything that is trimmed off will be made for, will be grounded, and be made for dumpling meat. And then right here, in order to get inside the bone.
Oh, I see. So this bone that is coming out, in Cantonese we would refer to as the sai si guat or the xin guat. This bone is we call it the blade bone.
Yes.
Blade shoulder, the shoulder blade, blade cut, shoulder blade, shoulder blade cut bone. Shoulder blade bone, but it is called the sai si guat in Hong Kong. And what do we usually use this for?
This is perfect to make some soup with it.
Perfect for soup.
And Chinese people, they love their making broth.
We love making broth with bones, and the good part about this is because of how tender the meat is. After you make soup out of this, you can scrape that meat off and actually sort of eat it. So this is the blade cut itself, the triangle that hugs this pretty complex shoulder blade. This meat is pretty lean, right?
Yes, it's extremely lean. This will be, again, perfect for stir frying, for doing soups. The more common use for this for Asian people is for this to make Chinese sausages.
Now that we're done with butchering the shoulder, next step is the loin.
This is the pork loin.
Yep.
Can we do a demonstration again of the center?
No problem. Right here, in the middle,
Right
next to
here.
the spine. So we started further up on the shoulder, and we're going to move downwards.
Down here, right here, and it's going
All the way
end
to the
right
end of
a
your
little,
spine, right?
right here, yeah. And then if you had a
then
tail, there's a little tail
but
right
this
here.
is the leg and the head.
Yep.
First, what's the first thing that you're going to take off of here?
The first thing that I'm going to take off is the tenderloin.
The tenderloin.
All right, AKA the filet mignon of the pork. Right here, I'm just going to take off some of the.
So this is inside the bone.
Yes, this is inside the pig. This muscle is rarely used, so that's why it's so tender. And I'm just going to glide right
Cool.
next to the spine. And then right here, you can pretty
Which
much
just rips off.
Yep.
Like the tenderloin next to a breast on a chicken, like a filet mignon on beef. So this is supposed to be the most tender part of the pork. It's very well prized, in especially a lot of Western cooking. Oftentimes tied up a little bit for a roast because of how tender it is, but also because of how lean it is, it doesn't give you a significant margin of error, which means that it's very often overcooked. To be frank, not my personal favorite cut of pork. And in my experience in a lot of Chinese cooking, there's a lot of tenderization, or rather, things are added to the marinade for the tenderloin to maintain its soft texture. It's kind of funny that we're standing here, all of us, looking at this.
Yep. What do you want?
The most expensive cut on a pork in a Western grocery store, and we're like, yeah, we don't really know what to do with it. Like, not really our favorite cut of pork. But that's the reality of cultural differences and preference differences.
The next we will
That's
be
so
doing
funny.
is called the sirloin chop. If you will find it in the American supermarkets, but for us, we call it the pork chop head. Even though this is the end of the pork chop, and you see here, this is actually the tailbone of the pig. All right. So I cut right here, right through the joint. Boom.
There you go.
Comes right off.
Pork chop head. 豬扒頭.
And this, again, Lucas, reiterate what we use this for.
Nothing. As in Botong, we make soup with this lean, very, very lean cut of pork. By the way, like I know we're joking a lot, but like making soup is a huge part of specifically Cantonese culture. You will find a lot of romantic comedy movies will feature a scene where one of the lovers or to-be lovers will approach the other lover with a thermos full of soup, because making soup for people you love is you trying to give them nourishment and establishing your interest in people. So what is this? This is ju pa tao, right?
This is the ju pa tao.
So
Sirloin chop.
this is a sirloin chop. So if I were to go to a Western supermarket to buy a sirloin, like a steak, it would be this piece, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's relatively lean, but it still does have a little bit of tendon and marbling. So it's quite a tender piece of pork. You could sear this off into a pork chop and it would be decent,
Yes, you
right?
could.
Yeah, definitely.
So now, actually, this flap of meat up top here is actually not very well known, and even in Chinese cultures and in Western cultures. And this is called the secreto meat. And this meat is extremely, extremely tender, flavorful. In our market, we call this the song pa yo.
So would this, in cow terms, would this be the ribeye calf?
Yes.
So this is a song pa. In oftentimes Latin American supermarkets are called secreto.
Yes.
So that's a Spanish term. What do you know? Do you know what it's used for in those contexts?
They would stir fry this.
Yeah, stir fry this. It's also a great piece of grilling meat. And visually, when we're identifying this, if you look at it, you'll see like strong, long strands of meat that will remind you of jowl or pork neck.
And again, you would not find this cut of meat in any other Chinese supermarkets, or actually in any other Western markets in New York City. We're the only one that take it out.
This I am going to make a stir fry out of a little bit later, hopefully capturing the texture of the pork. And then after that, related to this cut is, if you think about a ribeye, and I think this is just the easiest way to describe it because most people have seen it, is there's this top cap, this secreto, and then in between, there is a thinner layer of meat.
Yep.
That is my favorite cut of meat that in Cantonese we refer to as fei pa. So there's missing a little bit of fat here, but imagine, right? Reconstructing it here. Okay, basically from this angle, right? This is the rib, and there are two
So this
parts
is
of the
right
cap almost. This is the cap, this is the secreto.
Yep.
This is the fei pa. If you compare the color, it's a little bit darker than this. So it's gonna be a little bit more tender. A little bit more tender than this one. Slight color difference.
Yeah, it looks dark.
I really like this cut of meat for stir fries, especially when it's sliced thin, a little bit of cornstarch. A lot of butchery, and I'm no expert, I'm just an enthusiast, is about moving along the natural seams of the animal, finding out where the tendons and the fat is, and then carving along those lines. Very cool. So that's a fei pa, right?
Yep.
There you go. Fei pa is actually, stir fries is what my dad does with them the most, but this this butterfly chop, oftentimes used for steaming purposes also, because when you steam it, put a little bit of starch in there to protect it, it'll still have a bunch of resistance and a bunch of chew.
All right, so then here, generally speaking, this whole thing, we would turn it into a pork chop. And we'll run it through the bandsaw. And this part where it's the butterfly butterfly chop that you say, we sell it as a lun wa ju pa, and we sell it as a pork chop. And this one is going to be different from this kind of pork chop because of the fact that this is part of the ribeye loin, and this is just the mid loin.
Cool.
And this is a lot leaner than this side, and it's going to be a lot more flavor, a lot more tender, and just this is probably my favorite pork chop. But for today's purpose, because we do not have a bandsaw here, we're not going to be making pork chops out of this. So we're actually going to be making a little boneless pork chops, and I'm going to take the whole loin out. And also Western style,
Tend to have thicker pork chops,
a
right?
lot thicker. They'll be like 1 inch thick versus us Asians. We usually like to do it 1/4 inch.
Usually, pork chops are a little bit thinner in Chinese cooking because it is a relatively faster cook. Also, we like to add ingredients to the marinade. They're not just cooked as is with a little bit of salt, so that helps tenderize them. Now, Dave is doing something really interesting, which is he's actually keeping a healthy amount of meat on the bones themselves. He's not exactly following the contours for the pork chop, and there's good reason for this. Because, say it with me again, because Cantonese people like to make soup. So this loin bone, with this flesh that's attached to it, it's going to flavor your soup a little bit more as well. And that means that after you drink your soup, you'll have some pork to eat at the end of it. So this extra pork on here, which might be seen as a mistake in some Western traditions, is actually a good thing for Chinese purposes.
And this would be your boneless pork chops. You know, you
Yeah.
just slice them here.
It's amazing. That's a pork loin chop. If it had the bone on it, that would be the, if it had a bone on it, it'd be the pork chop, yes. So here is our third semi-primal and our last that we're going to show you today. This is the belly. It includes part of the rib, so really all we're going to make today are two cuts. The first is the belly,
The pork belly,
and the second is
just the spare ribs.
spare ribs.
I'm gonna flip this bad boy over.
Skin
You
on.
see, skin on. So today I'm just going to take the rib off.
The spare rib is one of Chinese people's favorite cuts of pork because it's got a nice marble, it's got really good flavor, it's right next to the bone. It's cut to different lengths, usually with a bandsaw for different applications. The rib, given that it is a little bit of a tough meat and requires a little bit more cooking, is usually braised or pre-marinated and tenderized and then steamed. You'll also find it pre-cooked and then deep fried. This is the bottom part of what you would buy as the spare rib. So yeah, this is the spare rib, and you were explaining earlier that with a bandsaw you would cut this into strips.
We would cut them into strips, 1 inch thick, 1, 2, 3, and then just cut them between the bones, and there'll be little
Spare ribs.
Yeah.
And in Chinese you call them,
Gamsa guat.
so gamsa guat, gamsa, I should look.
Gamsa pai guat.
Gamsa pai guat. So pai guat is the rib, gamsa is golden sand. Gamsa guat is one other way to refer to these meatier cuts of the spare rib. And so this is the belly, right? So this is
Yes.
what bacon is made out of.
Yes.
This is one of the toughest cuts of meat on the pork that takes the longest time to braise if you want it really nice and fall apart tender. The most common dish I think in Chinese is probably hong shao rou, right?
Yes.
Hong xiu you,
Hong xiu you.
which is soy sauce braised pork belly.
And how we would do that is actually, I'm just gonna square this right off, to just cut these into little strips like this.
Oh, I see. So as you're slicing them, you're turning them down so that they need to be equal widths, even though you're not using a ruler or anything like
Yes.
that. They also need to be parallel.
Yep. Ours would look like this. If you go to other Asian supermarkets,
There's
they would be
gristle,
all
there's
over the
bone,
place.
is all over the place, so
Yes.
skin's not taken off, and yeah, that's part of the delight. Now that we've shown you how to butcher the rib and the belly, we'll show you what dishes these cuts of pork can become. So welcome to the grand finale. Danny is here. He's made it all the way to the test kitchen. We have some food that is actually generously made by the Deluxe Food team that we've put up onto nice Food 52 plates. But we're going to show you a little bit of what Dave showed you earlier can become when they're cooked into dishes. So the bone on that shoulder, the sai si guat, the xin guat, is one of very many popular cuts of bone for the soup. Here we have a soup that's made with white pepper and a little bit of pig's stomach, but the broth itself would have been made by bones like the sai si guat. The congee here is what we call pei dan sao yok jok. So pei dan is century egg and sao yok is lean pork. Lean pork can come from any part of the pig that is nice and lean and not too fatty. This here comes from the shoulder. It's cut into strips to flavor the congee. This is the prized char siu, but this is the char siu that is called dayat do. So this is a char siu that is coming from the butt side, also, and specifically the capicola, or the copa, or the gabu, what becomes gabagool. Moving on to the loin cuts. Here is something that doesn't traditionally contain a lot of pork, but this is a fish paste stuffed pepper, really delicious street side snack in Hong Kong. The pork chops themselves here are made salt and pepper style, zhuzhed with a little bit of salt and white pepper, and garlic, chili, pepper, and a little bit of scallions. This is one of the signature dishes, one of my favorite things at Deluxe. Now, I made just a little quick stir fry because I couldn't help but show off the cut of the secreto, which is right next to that fei pa that I'm so in love with. Really nice and tender. We just stir fried it with whatever we had lying around, which in this case seems to be a little bit of celery and bell peppers, a little bit spicy. For the third part, the ribs and the belly, the ribs have been made three ways. First, as a sweet and sour spare rib, A little bit of a bone inside, but this is basically sweet and sour pork. Nice, bright and red. This is the full rib before it's been bandsawed and cut into small pieces. And then world famous, maybe my #1 favorite thing at Deluxe is the pork belly. The pork belly here is made cut boneless, as Dave demonstrated, and roasted high heat, low heat, high heat, low heat into what is called in Cantonese siu yok or fo yok. So really crispy, nice skin over the top. Cool. Should we taste some of the food? I mean, you guys already know what this food tastes like, except for this thing that I'm very embarrassed to put in front of you.
All right.
I'm very excited to taste yours.
Yeah.
Okay, super nice and tender, hopefully, if I did the right thing. So soft, right?
Really good.
So good.
The texture of the meat is where it's at. The song.
Yeah.
Song.
It's like goes in and it's like so soft and you're like, oh, it's just gonna be mush, but then there's a little bit of resistance.
Yep.
And it takes up flavor so well.
Don't mind if I do for another one.
If you want to like, comment, and subscribe, also, actually specifically, if you want to comment about how bad our Cantonese is together, as people who've spent way too much time in the US and are very nostalgic for Hong Kong and Southern China and Guangzhou, feel free to comment and berate us, but also let us know if you have any favorite Chinese cuts that we've missed. This is a quick thank you to the guys, the cousins, the family behind Deluxe, and all of the amazing work that you do on and off camera for me since I've been here. So thank you very much.
No problem, man.
52 for showcasing
I know.
our
Thank you for having
our
us.
art, you know.
Actually, mostly, thank you for giving me this hat. I've been hunting for this hat. I've been hunting for this hat for like 11, 12 years. Since going to Deluxe, these are the swaggiest hats in the world. It's got like a little cow on it. And you can't get this unless you know a guy, right?
Well, now you do, and now that since
Two
you're an
guys.
expert,
Two guys.
butcher, you got one.
Amazing.